Well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I know some other people will filter in. This is a busy time of the evening with dinner. Kristen's making her family cook their own dinner tonight, but we appreciate you taking time away from your family this evening to join us. As I said this morning, it's a bittersweet day for me, and even more so this evening, because this evening we wrap up our three-part series of Challenged, Cherished, and Known. And I know many of you, I see you that were on a couple weeks ago when we did the Cherished component, and I was telling you then that I'd always wanted to be Oprah, and so I was Oprah. But what I didn't get to say was that you are cherished, and you are cherished, and you are cherished. I know it's not a car, but you're cherished. So there, I was able to to say that. And so I was telling everybody on the panel today, I said, wonder who I'm going to channel this evening. And so I've decided that I'm going to be the icon Barbara Walters. So I did say a caveat that I will not make anybody cry. I'll probably make myself cry because y'all know how I am. But we're going to have a good time tonight as we wrap up this series of our parent education challenge, Cherish and Known. I'm super excited about our panel tonight. We're going to have the known component, and we have a really great variety of guests this evening. We're going to start out with, we have Lisa Condry. She is our school counselor and also a humanities teacher. We have Mary Richmeyer, who is our learning specialist. We have Stacy Smith, our school nurse and healthcare coordinator. Troy Griffith, he is a math teacher, a dorm parent, the head JV basketball coach, shout out to JV basketball, and Sarah Murphy, who is a dorm parent and the director of college counseling. And tonight, like any other night when we've held these events, it's just a casual conversation. And I hope you have a beverage of your choice and you can sit back and relax for a little bit and listen to what we have to say. I did not introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I am Tracy Carter. I am the Dean of Community and Wellness, and let's get started. Mary, I'm going to start with you. I know that you've been in education all over the world, from private schools to public schools in the U.S. What are some things that you've noticed that are unique to TMI?
I think, well, TMI is different in being a smaller school, where public schools are large entities, and making yourself visible in the crowd can be a bit of an effort. Teaching in international schools, there's just constant change. Students, families are moving all over the world. Teachers are constantly moving to new schools. So TMI I found unique, and really have enjoyed my time here with its history and its consistency. Another thing I really appreciate about TMI, I think it does really well getting to know each individual. However, I also think it really does exceptionally well at knowing the entire group. Before the pandemic, we would get together every single day on campus for chapel and have that time together as a group. Now, considering health and safety, we also have, attempts to gather in groups wherever possible. And I think I really appreciate that, of our ability to know all the students, but also to know TMI as a whole entire group.
Yeah, I kind of hadn't thought about that with specifically like your international schools. Those were probably a lot of like embassy families and maybe oil and gas, something or other like that.
Yes, yeah, a lot of oil and gas. And so they're, families who are constantly moving around. It's usually a 2 or 3 year rotation. So schools are sort of set up with that understanding of it will be a revolving door of students or teachers, families, however that works. And I really appreciate with, TMI, having been in San Antonio for such a long time, having that sort of consistent structure. But you also have teachers who've been here for a long time. You've had families be at this school and have a number of their kids come through, and that's really lovely to be a part of.
Yeah, that's cool. I think I take it for granted that being born and raised in San Antonio, of people who do travel all over the world for their job and sometimes have to jump from school to school. Whereas, at TMI, not that we don't have families leave, but we're lucky to have a middle and high school because we have people usually for the 7 years, or the 4, or even the 2, whatever it may be, but we're lucky in that respect. So that's good. Speaking of teachers who have been here a long time, shout out segue to Lisa. Lisa, you've been at TMI for 16 years and you've seen the school grow and change a lot. Tell us a little bit about how your role has changed over the years.
Well, when I was initially hired in 2005, I was hired as the Director of College Placement and School Counseling. We had a graduating class of about 50, and a student body of like about 300, 350, very different place in several different ways. As a smaller school, it was fairly comfortable to be able to handle both the college counseling and then the emotional needs of students as they arose. But we've been growing, as you know, ever since. And with the growing number of students and with our changing city and our changing world, we're finding that there are more needs to provide much more individual attention to students, and also to look programmatically at how we are going to address student needs school-wide. So over the years, I went from being the counselor. We added Jeremy Johnson several years ago, who could handle the college counseling side and direct that program, which freed me up to do more personal counseling. And then we got Sarah. And last year, we also added Alana Nichols, which has allowed me to move out of college counseling entirely and be much more available to students and their needs, consult more with teachers and parents and so on. And also to teach psychology, which is one of my joys as well.
That is a popular class here that the kids always love to take. Troy, I'm going to come to you. It seems like you started yesterday, but I know when you started, it was actually 6 years ago. As a long-term sub, you were actually my son's math teacher. So you teach, you're a coach, you're an advisor, you're a dorm parent. Tell us about what it's like wearing all those different hats when it comes to our students.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in a unique position here where I get to see kids in a lot of different light, or in a lot of different areas, I guess. And being a math teacher, especially, sometimes I don't really get to see kids come out of their shell in the classroom, mainly because only a small portion of students actually enjoy math on a day-to-day basis. And so it's kind of cool for me because I get some kids that are super interested in math, but if they're not, then maybe I get to coach them, and I get to see them do something that they're really passionate about on the basketball court, and I get to push them in different ways and interact with them in different ways. And then especially being a res life parent, that's where I get to see kids in probably their most relaxed state. So whether it's, playing game of Uno, which does get pretty heated, so I don't know if I should say relaxed, but doing that on a Friday night, or watching a movie and hanging out and just talking about, you get more of the relationship and the social aspect of mentoring them and talking with them there. It's just really fun to get to see kids in so many different aspects of their life here at TMI.
So I think that when you and Taylor decide to have kids, you're going to be a pro at it, right? Because you've been a dorm parent, so you'll have it down. No problem at all.
Definitely. I've heard being a parent is super easy, so I'm ready to go.
All of the parents on this call are rolling their eyes at you and biting their tongue. I'm just kidding. Stacy, let me come over to you. This year has proved to be a little bit different, to say the least. Tell us a little bit about the opportunities that you've come across, even through this pandemic.
Sure. Definitely different from previous years. That's definitely an understatement. No matter how old you get, you never stop learning, and this pandemic has helped prove that true. At times, I felt like I was back in nursing school while trying to learn everything that I possibly could about this new virus, while developing new policies and procedures and helping our school adapt to these changes. I always try and find silver linings in situations, and believe it or not, I found a handful of silver linings, and I've witnessed our TMI community come together and work together as we navigate through these uncharted waters. Our students have always been our top priority, but I must say that this school year, every decision that has been made we have had our students and their families in mind at all times. It's been amazing to see our administration work together, having to quickly pivot and then take a step back and make these difficult decisions that we know that will best benefit our families.
That's great. What are some examples that you might give us about, kind of the TMI community coming together and working together?
Sure. So I think one of my favorite, and I guess I'll use the term favorite loosely, because, COVID. I saw the community come together. I think the best time was when we were organizing graduation back in May. It was the beginning of COVID, and there was not a whole lot of guidance from the CDC or Metro yet. We all worked really hard to plan this graduation on the football field for our seniors. Everyone was involved in this planning process, and we had facilities literally walking and measuring the entire field to develop these 6x6 sections, and we had security organizing, entering and exiting. We were constantly consulting our physicians, our seniors, and their families. They were so excited that they'd be able to walk the stage. And, we had it planned to the T. We had every detail down. Then the COVID numbers started rising, and they kept increasing. And it was such an emotional and heartbreaking decision to cancel, but we knew that we couldn't gather all of these people and keep them safe. So we knew we had to do something special for our seniors because they deserve this recognition, and they had so much taken away from them in this last semester. And it was at one of our mini round table discussions, or maybe I should say our round table Zooms, that we decided to hold individual graduations for all of our seniors. And we quickly pivoted and organized, and I can't remember the timeline, but I think there was just literally a couple days that we had to change this all around. And we explained to our senior parents, who were more than happy to do whatever needed to be done for their senior. Faculty and staff, senior parents, we all literally stood out in the rain, and I heard zero complaints because we were able to honor our seniors. And looking back on it, it was just simply amazing to watch everyone come together and make this happen.
It really was. I remember you talking about the rain, and it would hold off. It held off for quite some time, and then it was a deluge. And we're walking around with our umbrellas. Needless to say, my hair did not look so great that day, but we had such a good time. And I told some of you that are even on this call that it was just it was almost one of the best graduations I've ever been to, because it was so personal and it was individual, and there was so much time that we were able to spend on that particular student and their family. So I agree, that was a really fun thing. Before I go to Sarah for the next question, I forgot to mention that parents, if you have any questions while we're speaking, or anything you want to ask at the end of our discussion, feel free to put it in the chat at the bottom. You can just hover your mouse over and you'll see where it says chat at the bottom of your window for Zoom. And those will go directly to me, and then I'll be happy to ask the panel when we finish. Sarah, let me come to you. I remember when you came to TMI and how excited I was for you to build our college counseling program. As Lisa talked about, it was growing, and what you were going to bring to that department was going to be incredible. You had, and you still do, have an abundance of energy for everything that we do on this campus. Side note, I used to call Sarah the Energizer Bunny, because she always has sensible shoes on, and she's walking all over this campus, walking all over coats. It's just amazing. And something you might not know is that she's probably been up since about 4 a.m. Because she goes on early morning runs. So, or at least she used to. So I'm like, Sarah, I need something, a little bit of what you have as in the energy department, that's for sure. But can you share with us a little bit about what made you decide to leave the admissions process at the college level and come to an independent school and do college counseling?
So what most people don't realize is that colleges and universities, they're a business. And so I was really working, aside from traveling and interviewing and reading applications, I was really working in a business. And so the one thing about interviewing students and reading their applications is that you only meet them that one time, honestly. And the only time we ever see them is if they decide to come back to admissions to work as a tour guide or a student worker. But I had the wonderful opportunity to interview at TMI when my good friend Jeremy Johnson, we had both worked together at Trinity University in admissions there. And he mentioned, hey, I'm moving to Houston. I encourage you to apply for my job. And I was at a place where I was, I was happy, but I thought I might as well give it a shot. And of course, on the day of my interview, it was such a great experience meeting so many students and just the warmth of the community, and also the opportunity to just see students grow, to get to know them from either middle school or ninth grade all the way through. And I really appreciated this opportunity.
Yeah, that's something that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. You and Jeremy were both at Trinity, and sorry, Trinity, we took some of your people away. But anyway, we're so glad that you're here. Lisa, let me come over to you. I know that you have been responsible for advisory on and off for very many years. How is what you're doing in advisory now different from back then?
Well, advisory is another thing that has evolved over the time that I've been here. When I first started, advisory was kind of like, oh yeah, we haven't had advisory in a while. Why don't we? And so several years ago, Troy Eason, Bob Bell, and I were tasked with reviving and doing something with advisory. So we took the approach of allowing teachers to kind of figure out how they want to have a relationship with the small group of students that they had and provide them with tools to be able to do certain kinds of lessons. We gave them a general outline and suggested when they should be doing different things throughout the year, but it was very much left in the hands of the advisors, at which, and yes, they did a great job, don't get me wrong, but still it was very loose and kind of like, what are we doing with advisory, and dropping in administrative things from time to time. So there wasn't really a coherent sense among faculty or among the students and parents as well about, well, what is this advisory thing? So in an attempt to, again, try to get advisory to be a way that we can create more community and more of a sense of belonging for students and with advisors and students, Father Scott had asked Father Nate and me to see what we could do to codify advisory even more. We are now in the process of developing a 3-year cycle so that a student starting in 6th grade will go through all 3 of those years. And then when they get into 9th grade, they will be going through those 3 years again, but on a different level, for more complex thinking and more complex lives that students have in high school. Then the senior year, we're working on developing an individual program for seniors so that we are able to find them where they are, with straddling the world of high school and getting ready to put that foot into the adult world. So advisory is something that we see as being central to making TMI a community that it starts with small groups and moving out to the large community of TMI and having that sense of belonging throughout.
Thank you. Let's keep with the advisory theme here. And Troy, I'm going to come to you. What benefits do you see from having an advisory that might be unexpected?
Yeah, definitely. So Lisa sort of just alluded to kind of the structure of advisory and kind of the structured lessons that we have, but some of the benefits that I've seen have come from the times where we're not even necessarily in the framework of a discussion, but maybe we have 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of advisory or at the end where we've finished talking or we haven't quite started yet, and I'm just kind of sitting around listening to the kids talk, and in some ways I like advisory because it's the time where there's no sort of academic pressure. It's not for a grade or anything like that. So that's kind of when I get to hear them talk about what'd you do this weekend, what have you watched on TV right now, that basketball game last night. And so I really like to interject myself into those conversations and, get to know them that way. And so sometimes they'll just be talking about like a Netflix show or something, and I'll be like, oh, what? Like I watched that show too. And, the kids are always like, wait, you've watched that? And I'm like, yeah, my wife made me watch it. And then I fell in love with it. And we watched all 10 seasons in a month. And then we planned a trip around going to the places where they filmed the show and seeing all the places. And so just getting to kind of talk to them about that kind of thing and find out what they're interested in is really cool. That's one benefit. And then another benefit that I see is Sometimes you'll have kids in your advisory that you don't actually teach. So maybe you'll have them for a couple years. You don't have them in class, but then you get to have them in class maybe when they're a junior or senior. And I found that in those sort of scenarios, it's so much easier to jump in and start teaching them right away and get them, because you already have a relationship with them. You kind of already know, you've been following them academically, so you already know what their strong suits are, what they're good at, what they struggle with some. And so getting to build that relationship ahead of teaching them is super beneficial, not only for me, but also for the student as well.
Okay, see, I knew that would happen. My dog would start barking. And so, hey, this is live television, people. Anyway, moving on, Mary, I understand that a learning specialist works with students traditionally with some diagnosed learning needs. But what about when a student just has some general academic challenges and stuff like that? How can you help?
It's true. Some or a lot of my work is with students who've been diagnosed with, say dyslexia or attention issues, things like that. But I think what's really nice working in a school like TMI, there's a number of different avenues and structures to help students if they're hitting some sort of academic challenge. Like Lisa and Troy just talked about, there's advisory. We have dedicated teachers, they have office hours, there's a lot of work that can happen there. But sometimes it can help to seek an outside perspective. So a teacher, a student, parents are welcome to reach out to me, and we can sit through, brainstorm, think about strategies, and try to come up with a way forward.
Thank you. Sarah, I'm gonna pop over to you now. The college admissions process seems to have evolved into more of a complex process than certainly when I applied to college. How does your department get to know the students through that process, since you don't have them like necessarily in a classroom?
Great question. So usually it starts in ninth grade, where we have a grade level meeting. We're already planning for that. In January, we'll go over PSAT scores. And when we meet the grade as a whole, we do it again in 10th grade, but by junior year, that's when we really meet with them individually. We start off with meeting with their parents as well, joining the meeting. And then from there, I recently revamped how we do the meetings to make it more structured. And they have a minimum of 6 mandatory meetings to meet with us beginning their junior year. So we already started meeting with the juniors last month. And then that will continue on, and we have an agenda that's set. And during that time, we really get to know the students. And then outside of that, we're out in the community. I go to the games, I go to the plays, I go to the concerts, and I'll even volunteer to sub if I'm free an hour and I don't have a meeting. But we make an effort to just be out and open in the community. You're muted, Tracy.
We talked about that this morning, that's a bingo game or something like that, when someone unzooms or doesn't unmute themselves. Well, I'm glad I was able to be the first to do that. So anyway, what I was saying is that I understand that the counselor letter of recommendation is a required piece that goes along with the transcript. Rumor has it that counselor letters from TMI receive a lot of high praise from colleges. So what is it that how in the world do you get to really know? I mean, you talked a little bit about subbing and going to the games and stuff, but in order to write that comprehensive letter, how do you go about doing that?
So often, especially by the junior year, they're coming into our offices, but we also require a session. We used to call it the interview session, but it started to stress students out. So we call it now a CAM session, which is Chat About Me. And this is an opportunity for them to really talk about themselves. And I give them the questions ahead of time so that they can prepare for it and share it with their parents. I also invite parents to submit a parent letter to us, because obviously we don't see everything in the classrooms. We don't see everything around the campus, and I don't have them in the classroom, so I really don't see a lot. And then during the interview with the students, I asked them, name a couple of peers I could talk to who are your friends, your teammates, who are somebody you mentored in the Corps. And I reach out to them. And then, of course, I talk to their teachers. So a combination of all of this, it's kind of like doing a research paper. And on average, it takes us about 3.5 hours to complete one letter of recommendation. So.
Wow, that's a lot. So I'm going to send you an invite so that I can have my own cam session. Is that okay? Chat about me. I'll try not to get too stressed out about it, though. Stacy, let me come over to you. A common misconception about nurses is that all you do is hand out ice packs or Band-Aids. Talk to us a little bit about what your day looks like.
Sure. So I will say that ice packs and Band-Aids do fix many ailments, especially with our younger ones. However, I do see several things that those items don't necessarily fix. I see anything from broken bones to students that just need a 10-minute break from their normal routine. I view myself as a student advocate, and I assist students in speaking up when it comes to their own medical needs. For example, let's say a student with a chronic condition, such as a life-threatening food allergy, or even someone that's recovering from a concussion. I'll work with the student and their teachers so that everyone is comfortable within that unique situation. And sometimes education is needed, especially with a new diagnosis. And I'm more than happy to assist with that education.
I know I always feel confident and safe when you've taught us, like when we do our CPR training and stuff like that, and or someone that has an allergy and using an EpiPen. So we never quit learning, and we're lucky to have you and teaching us to do that. Now, you mentioned something about sometimes kids just needing to take a break, a 10-minute break. Talk to me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought that up. So the Student-Led Community and Wellness Advisory Council, they started working on our Stress Less room, and that's located in the health center. They started that back in February. Unfortunately, COVID interrupted that, but however, we still are utilizing that room for those students that need, like a 10 or 15-minute break. The room is designed to be a calm and quiet environment for everyone that just needs a break. I've had students who get a grade they aren't happy with come down and just need a few minutes to gather themselves. I've had students come down that are overwhelmed, not necessarily to the point where they need to see Mrs. Condry, but they recognize that they just need a few quiet moments to themselves, which honestly, I think all of us really need a few minutes of peace every once in a while. So yeah.
I'll speak from experience. I may or may not have snuck down to the health center to have a little quiet time of my own. It is a very peaceful place, and it's nice that we have that space. Lisa, I'm going to come over to you. I've heard this question asked before, but are you the school psychotherapist?
No, I'm a licensed master social worker, and the field of social work is definitely rooted in psychology, but it is a problem-solving profession. So I kind of see myself, on the one hand, as being the sympathetic ear who can help solve problems. So when students come to talk, I have it in my mind that whatever it is that they want to talk about, and they can unload and they can cry and whatever that. The point of our conversation is to help them get from where they're stuck right now to being able to move out the door with the tools that they need to get through the rest of their day, to maybe start solving the problem that has caused them to be so upset to begin with. And then also, I kind of sometimes serve as, say, a point person for a student to kind of help them get started with the process of advocating for themselves, either by talking to a teacher that they are too afraid to speak to, or maybe finding out some information so that, again, they don't have to talk to that adult that intimidates them, but I can find out the information that they need, provide it to them so they can then step out and then move on to making decisions and actions in their own life.
So share with us a little bit about what are some of the limits of things you're able to provide?
Well, I can work with a student for a limited period of time, say meet with them for a few weeks, kind of help them get on the road to where they're going. I'm always available if a previous customer that I've worked with for a while is having problems or, feeling overwhelmed again. It's not like, okay, done with you, but they can come back anytime and talk about whatever it is on their mind. I also try to help students and families when necessary to find resources within the community to help them address emotional needs that are going to need more long-term intervention.
And Lisa's always great. I don't know if any of you have been by her office, but she has this little whiteboard, and she always is like back in 10, and she puts the time, or I'm over in the chapel portico or whatever. So kids always know where to find her, or I'm teaching, most kids know when she's doing that. But anyway, so she always makes herself available. Mary, I'm going to ask you this question. What do you think specialists like Stacy and yourself and Lisa are able to offer that enriches TMI students' learning experience?
That's a good question. I think Stacy and Lisa just talked a lot about that, but we want students to do well here, and we want them to learn. So a lot of that is allowing teachers to really be focused on students, on learning, on content. And so, just as Stacy said, if there's a new diagnosis coming in, she's able to really concentrate that information and share that with teachers rather than them needing to go do that research. Or if you've got a group project and some sort of reason the group dynamics aren't going well, teachers or students can go see Lisa for strategies on maybe how that can better become a functioning group. Similar with me, teachers or students are able to reach out and say, I'm studying, I feel like I'm working hard for this test and I'm just not getting the score that I want. How can that work? So I think allowing teachers to really focus in primarily on students and learning, and then also having other avenues to seek out assistance really benefits everyone.
Troy, I'm going to jump over to you. What perspective do you think you get on students from coaching that maybe you wouldn't in the classroom?
Yeah, so I sort of mentioned a little bit earlier about how, as a teacher teaching math, I don't always get the most insight into kids just because it's hard for them to speak up or they don't enjoy math that much. So for basketball, first and foremost, I can push them a little bit differently than I can in the classroom. I certainly can't make a kid drop and give me 20 push-ups if they're late to class. Sometimes I wish I could, but so in basketball though, you can treat them a little bit differently. You can kind of see how they respond to maybe being physically pushed as opposed to being academically pushed. And so it kind of gives you a little bit more insight into different kids' personalities, and different kids have to be pushed different ways when you coach them. But then you can carry some of that over into the classroom too with how you talk to them and stuff. So that's always good. And, I always say my number one job at the school is to teach. And so what I found is when I do get a chance to coach kids as well as teach them, it makes the teaching aspect that much easier. I teach at least half of the varsity basketball team this year in my pre-calculus course. And so getting to see them in the classroom and then every day after school for practice is really cool because I'm just steadily building those relationships, whether it's in practice or whether we're traveling or watching film. All of those things are just other opportunities to build those relationships and see kids in their element a little bit more.
Yeah. Sarah, you're a dorm parent just like Troy is, and besides your day job, that's your afternoon, evening, into the late evening, early next morning job. But I hear that the Res Life program really has a vibrant and robust scene like after school and on the weekends. There's been a lot of changes for that this year. How so, and why do you love being a house parent?
We have a great new director, Todd Davis. The program was great even before he arrived, but because of COVID, he's really had to think outside of the box and really force us to think and to be creative and utilize our resources here and not seek anything outside. And so we've done a lot of creative things that are outside and safe. And because of that, it's really been very vibrant. Anything from s'mores, which I observed another organization on how to handle s'mores safely, to karaoke night, movies outdoors. We celebrated a student's birthday. We played musical chairs. We had a piñata. Troy mentioned Uno, which can get very competitive. But outside my door during study hall every night, the students come together, and that's when the dorm really transforms into really what would be college life. What I love about it is that they push one another to think, they collaborate to help each other study. There's always a lot of philosophical debates, and there's also a lot of good fun, good laughs, and it's just beautiful to see them grow, and to witness that is really rewarding.
So tell me a little bit, you were just talking about like student growth and that process. Do you have an example of that?
So we are in a boys' dorm, which we take on the younger boys, so grades 8th, 9th, and some 10th. And so usually we have to require a lot more structure than some of the other houses. And one of the rules is collecting electronics every single school night. They don't like it, and we did have a student who really kind of fought us on it, and one thing led to another, and we realized that he was kind of holding back the device. But long story short, after kind of going through that process, explaining to him and grounding him, we ground our students too, just like other parents. And it took a while, but he finally came to terms. And I remember one night when he just revealed, wow, this is a really good program here in Ewing. I understand why you collect electronics. I see the benefit. I'm getting sleep. And so just to see that maturity, and he's just a 9th grader, I'm so excited to watch him grow even further over the next 3 years.
We need to have him talk to some other kids about the value of sleep and realizing that you can survive without your electronic devices. So that's cool. It's just like any other home. You know, you're their mom. So that's so neat. Stacy, you have a really unique role here on campus. So tell me, how are you able to get to know students while you're in the health center?
I do have a unique role, and I'll tell you, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I've worked in the ER, and I've worked in urgent care settings, and working here has been one of the most rewarding positions I've held. I love the relationships I'm able to build with our students, and the level of trust that is developed between myself, the students, and their families. So even if a student comes in just for a Band-Aid, I make every attempt to get to know them. I ask them questions, and I'm constantly reassuring our students that the health center is always a safe place to come. I get to see our kids grow from 6th graders to seniors. And side note, this is my year of my first class of 6th graders will graduate in May. So I'm so excited to see that full circle.
That is a fun thing. I remember when I did my first, I had my all 7-year kids, and you feel like a proud parent, talking about being a dorm parent, or, just every day, just being a proud parent, because you've seen these kids, you remember how teeny tiny they were in 6th grade, and what they're embarking on for their future. So that's really cool. I'm glad this year you're going to be experiencing that. Lisa, let me come over to you. You hear a lot about confidentiality between client and counselor. What about informing parents about conversations that you've had with their student?
Well, confidentiality is definitely something that the students want. They would like to know that when they're talking with me, that it's not going anywhere else. But I make it clear to them in our very first conversation that there are 3 conditions under which I must always say something to somebody else, as in their parents. And that is if they are threatening to harm themselves, or they are a danger to themselves, if they are threatening to harm somebody else, and if somebody is harming them. Those are always the conditions when it's like, got to talk to your parents about that. But then even over the course of the conversations, if one of those big 3 does not come up, if I feel that there is a persistent theme of depression or anxiety or some other mental health issue that really needs to be addressed, then I'm on the horn and talking to parents about that. And certainly parents can contact me and have done so and said, would you talk to my child? And I will tell them, yes, I'll be happy to do that. And, these are the things that, I'll let you know that what goes on in the conversation, but, in a general way, and I will certainly give you an idea about how I think the state of their mental health is. So, parents are going to know if there is any hint that I have that there is something really problematic going on with their child, they're going to hear about it.
Troy, we talked a little bit about getting to know kids, like from a coaching standpoint, but tell me, how are some ways that you get to know your students? Like, just say you only teach them, you don't coach them, or they're not your, they don't live in the dorms with you, or you're not their advisor. How do you get to know the kids just as a teacher?
Yeah, I think like a big part of that is just making sure that kids understand that there's life outside of like your subject that you're teaching them. And so I really like to, if we're coming off a weekend or off a break or something, taking the first 5 minutes of class or so just to ask them what they did, what restaurants did you go to, did you travel at all, that kind of thing. What did you watch? Just to kind of get an idea of, what their life is like outside of school. And I was just like thinking, like, this year we have one kid in particular in my 5th period where every single day, right after that class is right after lunch, we ask him what he ate for lunch that day. It's just sort of become a thing. And he tells us what he ate for lunch. And then, we get into discussions about like, oh, you had mayonnaise on your sandwich. Well, who in class likes mayonnaise? And class is split right down the middle. And then we start to have a debate about why mayonnaise is good or bad. And just silly little things like that. Kids really like that for community building and just making them feel comfortable. So getting to do that and just making sure that you keep your class as lighthearted as possible in most times is really helpful towards like opening them up for the actual learning process.
I have a student that's on a advisory council with me, and she loves food. She's an athlete. She does a lot of working out, and I'm telling you, our conversations always begin with either what's for lunch. She goes back for seconds and sometimes thirds, and it is fun. I mean, something as simple as like, why'd you have mayonnaise on your sandwich? And I'll give a little plug to make sure that you have the kids continue to fill out what they like and where they seek improvement on the Sage app. That was something fun that we did before the Thanksgiving break. Mary, I'm going to kind of ask you the same question, but what are some ways that you see like teachers know their students, like specifically in their work with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I really like about a school like TMI is when you have a smaller school and you have teachers who've had students for a number of years. They really seem to understand and know their students really quite well. And so if there is a change, if they're noticing something different, right, there's an ability to go talk to, Lisa, if that's a concern, but also maybe like, I just don't understand why they're not doing well on this unit, and they have all the way along. And so they can come and see me and we can sort of talk through different ideas. And that is always something that I really enjoy, but find also very motivating with working with individuals who really have learning always at the base of their conversations, and how do we help students to do their best. And that it's hard to do if you don't know students really well.
Yeah, that's very true. Stacy, you mentioned earlier that you are passionate about learning and educating people. Now, I'm assuming you're not talking about trying to knock off Troy in the math department or one of our history teachers, are you?
You are correct. I will leave those traditional subjects to the experts we have here on campus. No, the education I refer to is, almost anything medical. My theory is that education is the best prevention in so many ways. And I absolutely love to educate our students, our faculty, and our parents on things anywhere from why you should get your flu shot to chronic conditions such as diabetes. If everyone involved with a student who has a chronic condition or even in recovery from an illness or injury is educated and familiar on that specific topic, it makes the process so much smoother for the student and their family. For example, with a newly diagnosed condition or illness, I will normally put together a presentation for the faculty involved, and just make sure that each teacher is fully informed and comfortable. It's already stressful enough when our students receive a new diagnosis. So I just try to make that a smoother process for everyone involved.
Well, I will say you do. From a faculty and staff and admin standpoint, you certainly do. And it's so important, like you said, because this is something new that kids are having to learn, right? Just like learning math or history or English, whatever, this is something new that they need to learn how to manage their own health. So that's true. Sarah, as I mentioned earlier, you wear a lot of hats around TMI. And I think what some people might not know is that you are the sponsor for the junior senior prom. Thank you so much. And you're also responsible for the Student Equity Committee. Can you share with us a little bit about what that process or experience has been like?
So it's really rewarding to work with student groups because they are the ones that I encourage to be the problem solvers, the planners. With the junior class officers last year, prom was scheduled to take place literally 2 weeks after we immediately went remote. And so meeting through Zoom and seeing how they could problem solve and still create a wonderful event and still make it memorable for seniors as well, because they were being sort of robbed of a lot of the milestones and the traditions their senior year. It was great to see how they were encouraging and supportive of one another and positive and encouraging of the senior class, and just to witness and just see the gears moving and how they would plan something that was virtual. With student equity, I'm new to it. It's brand new, but hearing their voices, seeing what they're concerned about, and seeing the things that they have ideas to improve upon, it's just been, so sorry, it's been very rewarding. Oh my gosh, I have a tickle. I'm good.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're okay. Hopefully you can get a sip of water there or something. And Troy, as we wrap up our evening here, I'm going to come to you for the last question. Leave us a little bit about how you make your students feel known. We've talked about it from just a classroom side. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but just wrap it up for us.
Yeah, I think like one of the biggest things that I really try to do on an everyday basis is every single time I see a kid in the hallway, I really like to just say hi and say their name and look them in the eye, just so that they know that I see them and that they matter. And I've had kids ask me in the past, like, "Man, you say hi to me like literally every time you see me," and I'm like, "Yeah, I want to make sure that you know that I see you and I recognize you." And I think for a lot of kids, like that's a very small thing, but we're kind of in this age of technology where every single time class is done, kids immediately whip their phones out and they're texting and making phone calls and stuff in the hallway. So, kids recognize when you take the time out of your day to do something like that. So I like to do that. And then the other thing that comes to mind really is in the classroom when when a kid who maybe is not always as apt to talk or to speak up and answer, whenever they do, I really do like to try to make an effort to recognize that and say, "Hey, Johnny, good answer." And I recognize, that you're putting yourself out there and not making it awkward or anything, but just like making sure a kid knows like, "Hey, I see what they're trying to do," and just let them know, "Hey, I don't even care if the answer is wrong. If you're willing to speak up and try to contribute to what's going on in class, like I'm going to recognize that and affirm you in that." And just letting kids know that it's okay to fail and making them feel comfortable when they do. And I really think that goes a long ways to just building up their confidence and their self-esteem in all aspects.
I remember a couple of years ago when we instituted a new policy where students couldn't have their phone when they were in the refectory. And, you know, of course, as typical young people is, oh, you're punishing us. Why can't we have our phone? What difference does it make? But it just goes back to the importance of looking at someone, having a conversation, just like with you saying hello. And I can recall when I've been walking in the halls and I'll say hello to a student and they kind of look at me like, why does she even know my name? And then same place the next day and I say hello again and now they say hello back. And, you know, just being able to do that. I'm not in the classroom every day like you are, but it is so important. And who would have ever thought that something so simple as a hello, but to make sure that the students do know that they're recognized and they're seen, whether we teach them or not, that we realize that they're here. And so I think that's so important. And in a world of social media, it helps all of us to, you know, take that phone out of our hand a little bit. And it was amazing how by the end of, I'd say probably second quarter last year when we had that plan in place, you kind of just didn't hear about the complaints anymore. I don't know, parents, they might have gone home and complained to you, but you know, that's just what it was. Once you understand, we want you to talk to each other. I want to be able to talk to you. So I'm so glad that you do that and that everyone here does. We have one question. We are done with the questions we had prepared for you tonight, but this is a very good question. And I have a feeling they're asking this because they want to be able to use it perhaps with their own kiddos. But we have a question that says, what time do you take electronics away? Sarah, I think you had mentioned that.
Great question. So we take away the electronics right at lockup. Here in the dorms, study halls from 7 to 9 p.m. and 9 to 10 is their free period, so they will play video games at that time. But at 10 o'clock, we collect them. I'm actually in the office where they drop off their electronics. And then I tell them I will unlock the door at 7 a.m. And there's always one boy who's literally on the couch at 6:55. I always have to be on time. One morning I was 5 minutes late, but at 7 o'clock I unlock it and then he gets it and they get their sleep. So that's really what I'm more pleased about.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank my panel again for taking time out of their evening to share with you how they know your students and parents, especially for you. Kristen, shout out Hope Dinner that the kids made and your husband was okay. Just to say that TMI is the community that we are because of parents like you. What you bring to our everyday life with sharing your students, your most precious gift, and making the community be what we are. There is no other school that has a community like we do. So I appreciate so much you allowing us to spend some time this evening with you. I will also give a shout out to our next parent education event. Some of you may have already seen the email that went out this morning in regards to our in-person Walker Innovation Center tour that we're going to have. That will be next week. It is limited due to social distancing concerns. We want to continue to keep everybody safe. And so be sure to sign up for one of those two if you're interested in seeing more behind the scenes and really expanding out on what it will look like. It's not just, we're not just going to show you the building, we're going to show you the different things surrounding the building. So anyway, I will sign off. Thank you again. I appreciate your time. And we will look forward to the next time when we can be together. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Roy. Thanks, Lise.